that?
I'm not even checking. They're dead. They are dead, aren't they?
Just turn on those.
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
Granny. Granny's all dead.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Maggie and Paul Murdaugh, Mallory Beach, Gloria Satterfield, Stephen Smith. Those are the names of people who have died in connection to the Murdaugh family. Well, I'm not quite sure about Stephen Smith though. And yet you'll learn little to nothing about them in Murdaugh, Death in the Family. That's according to an article in USA Today. You'll learn little to nothing. Well, I covered this case in depth through 48 videos, and I also visited Moselle, where Maggie, Paul and the housekeeper died, as well as Beaufort and the bridge where beautiful Mallory Beach lost her life, and basically set in motion this whole chain of events. I also walked around Hampton, the town where Alex Murdaugh's law firm was based. It's a very John Grisham-like setting for a very John Grisham-esque story. And yes, I visited the spot where Buster's classmate Stephen Smith was found dead by the side of the road as well. So I'd say I know this case better than many, perhaps more than most. And I didn't find Murdaugh, Death in the Family meaningless, or, this idea that I didn't learn anything. I didn't find it mediocre either. Maddening at times, including in the very first scene, ironically, which we'll get to in a moment. But instead of learning next to nothing, I discovered 7 sparkling insights in just the first 5 minutes. What resonated with me was how the production nailed the fabric of the case, meaning the vibe of the South, the lay of the land, the law firm, Moselle, the outside of Moselle, the inside, most of all the family dynamics. That requires detail and due diligence, and although not everything jibes, I felt it was sufficiently authentic. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button. I'll put a link to that 48 episode playlist in the description, so look out for that. And that brings us to 7 sparkling insights in the first 5 minutes. Number 1, unbelievable. Ironically, in the very first scene, where sputtering Jason Clarke tries to channel the monster in the monstrous moment following the double homicide, well, I think the production completely loses the plot. I think I know why. I think they're trying to cast him in a way that you sort of believe him to begin with, and then as the story unfolds, you understand that you, like many others, have been duped, and then it's all about just how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is Alec Murdaugh of 4147 Moselle Road.
You might say Hulu getting Murdaugh's demeanor at the critical ground zero of the crime scene, getting his demeanor completely wrong, isn't an insight, but I would say it leads to one. So while I agree with the scathing assessment in USA Today, where the reporter writes, Alex fails to register as a believable killer with his accent, wig, fat suit, and use of local slang like beau, meaning friend or brother, Clarke seems more like a cartoon character than an actual criminal who is currently serving 2 consecutive life sentences for brutally murdering his family. But I think the more interesting question to ask is why this is. Why isn't he believable? Well, it's simply not believable that when Murdaugh murdered his wife and son deliberately, one after the other, that he showed, let alone felt, any real remorse. Why? Because it was a premeditated act, and one he had reconciled himself to doing likely for quite some time before he did it. So he wouldn't be bawling about it afterwards, except to register this on the call, which he knew would be recorded. If I directed the opening scene, I would have had Murdaugh first appear deadpan and determined, methodical, clinical, nonchalant, unemotional, and then as he's about to call 911, you see him transform into, just quickly, instantly, into the sputtering, voice-cracking faker manipulator that we hear in the actual 911 call. And then when that call is complete, I would have him transition back to this person who's kind of devoid of emotion.
Please hurry.
We're getting somebody out there to you.
Number 2, the fabric of Moselle. Dogs, guns, drugs, and fat cat favoritism. Hulu gets this part right. There's a rich country bumpkin southern charm vibe about this story that's instantly recognizable, and yet it has an edge to it. Murdaugh doesn't just love guns, he has an arsenal of them. How many killers have we dealt with now that are big fans of hunting? I don't think it's overstating things to say if Murdaugh tried to play sniper, he'd had some practice, so he'd probably be quite good at it. Don't you agree?
Mo! Oh, this thing flies! Oh! Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a headshot 2, it's double. Headshot 2, it's double. That's $7, $10 a pop.
These scenes are, of course, taken from reality. Hulu gets the details right, like Murdaugh's creepy dark glasses perched on the ginger turf of his oversized head. But another thing that was idiosyncratic about him is he'd wear his reading glasses at the same time as propping the glasses, if you ask me, quite pretentiously on the top of his head. Number 3, guns used to hunt animals were probably the same guns used to hunt people. Interestingly, in this case, the murder weapons, that's plural, were never found. However, they were able to prove that Murdaugh had owned the same firearms and used them on Murdaugh's property on previous occasions. So it shows in the murder of Charlie Kirk, even if they never found the rifle, they could probably have proven what sort of rifle was used and that Tyler Robinson had owned one at a particular time in his life, and that would be sufficient. There's also a blink and you'll miss it moment at 3 minutes 27 where Murdaugh playfully turns his weapon on his mates and pretends to shoot them.
Come on! Come on, I'm gonna go to shoot you bastards!
Number 4, Murdaugh is presented as something of an enigma. He is an enigma, and what happened is also something of an enigma. How does someone who has everything become someone who ends up throwing it all away? Well, that's a theme we see over and over again in real life. How does having everything somehow still become not having enough? There's no doubt Alex Murdaugh was at turns charming and likable, and was probably also a father loved by both his sons and their mother. Once upon a time that was true, so what changed? I think one aspect that's easy to forget is that Murdaugh wasn't first in line to the throne, or the first in line to the legacy, or whatever you want to call it. He had brothers, both older and younger than he was, which meant he was sort of the lost, overlooked middle child. And more importantly, I think he felt that way. And the subtlety of this opprobrium is cleverly shown where Murdaugh suddenly looks darkly at a television playing in the kitchen and sees the patriarch of the family and realizes all the ways he's being passed over and not getting what he deserves of the family treasure or the family recognition or the family prestige. When Maddie Murdaugh drawls, "Someday it's going to be you getting that award," that really captures the essence of what we're talking about. Because Murdaugh wants what he feels he is owed. He wants what he feels he deserves, but he also senses it's passing him by.
Carolina's highest civilian honor, the Order of the Palmetto, to former 14th District Solicitor and Hampton County's own Randolph Murdaugh III.
Someday it's going to be you getting that award.
5. Paul is presented as a black sheep. The irony of all this is that while his father clearly doesn't like his youngest son, he seems to dislike him for all the same reasons he is so dislikable. Because second-born underachieving Paul, like his middle child underachieving father, has a big chip on his shoulder, and both use the same strategy to soothe themselves through substances. Paul drinks, Alex secretly gobbles down white pills. Number 6, Buster is the favorite. Unlike the Chris Watts case, in this case the father killed the one child and spared the other. This shows not only to what extent he despised and blamed poor Paul, but also to what extent he favored and preferred Buster.
Oh! Oh! You son of a gun.
you son of a gun. We see this clearly at 1352 when Buster gets accepted into college, studying law, of course, and Paul is basically just totally overlooked. He's ordered to even congratulate his sibling. There's a moment where Alex gushes over Buster, calling him a self-made man, where the camera flits over to an insecure-looking Paul. Paul knows that everything he is and everything he will ever be is based on nothing more or less than on him being a Murdaugh. And of course, even in this moment, all Paul cares about is getting a second glass of bubbly. Number 7, driving to work.
You want to try the new rifle later?
I took that out for a spin this morning with Bruce and John Marvin.
Oh. Thought we were breaking it in together.
Yeah, it fires like a dream. Give it a go.
On his way to work, Murdaugh drives past the scene of the Stephen Smith accident. This Stephen Smith's death would only become a major accusation against the Murdaughs after the deaths of Maggie, Paul, Mallory, and the housekeeper. If this idea of this image is to create unease, well, it succeeds, but it also points to another area of the Murdaugh case, which is the unknown boundary between the foul deeds he committed and those he wasn't responsible for. I'll tell you one aspect I really didn't like, and that was the building Murdaugh drives to when he goes to work. This wasn't even close to the real thing. I know because I drove there. I stood there. And as I mentioned earlier, it really does evoke a John Grisham thriller. You really do feel like when you're in the Hampton town, you really do feel like you've walked into a John Grisham book when you wander the fabric of the Murdaugh case. There's a lot of shadowy stuff going on, which is why the conspiracy that Buster killed Stephen Smith is so catchy. By the way, Buster is suing all the publications that blatantly accused him of this. I've never really believed it, but the folks who do, they do because they want Alex Murdaugh to be as bad to the bone as they believe he must be. Basically an echo, maybe more presentiment of what would later happen in the current Charlie Kirk case. Because social media teaches its audiences to exaggerate and to make things as emotional, sensational, and shocking as possible, just to awaken that sense of indignation and grievance. That works for engagement. It's not necessarily true, though. For my part, I'm not 100% sure that if you drive via Stephen's accident scene from Moselle to get to Hampton and to get to his workplace. I say that because I've driven that road and I don't remember it being so simple, so straightforward, or so on the way. According to the article in USA Today, the rest of the cast is similarly sleepwalking through a fanciful pantomime of Southern culture rather than a serious drama. So you see, I wouldn't say I didn't learn anything, but how about you? Did you find it meaningless, mediocre, and maddening? The same reviewer from USA Today gives the series a pathetic 1-star rating. You know, true crime audiences today are spoiled for choice. They really are. Remember, once upon a time, all we got was Lifetime movie bad movies on Lifetime. I feel like true crime fodder or true crime series have come a long way since then, in leaps and bounds. But perhaps like Murdaugh himself, audiences, some anyway, have become increasingly entitled in terms of their expectations. At the same time, these unrealistic expectations, I think, also speak of audiences that are often simply just out of touch with reality. And of course, that is the beginning of the recipe for why these lives were ruined in the first place. Unrealistic expectations. Getting back in touch with the real world, which includes going out into the world and visiting some of these places, is a reminder that truth is both weirder and less shocking, a little bit more banal than fiction. Our need to embellish a story that we may find boring says more about our own dissatisfactions with life than I think is any reflection of verisimilitudes, too little or too much, in storytelling. In any event, I'm not going to take it further than that. If you'd like me to continue my analysis of this series, do let me know in the comments. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.